talk about the lesson plan in physical education. So this does connect, right, to our assignment, as well as looking back at chapter 3 and talking about those motor skills. That's what I want you to build that lesson plan around. So what is a physical education or a PE lesson plan look like? So as we get into it, some things in teaching in general, in my opinion, are the following 4 things here: some patience, flexibility, persistence, and self-knowledge. Okay, and this is not just for PE, right? But this is for people who are understand planning, the process that goes into it, and how when you have plans, they probably will change at some point. Okay, so these 4 components are important for planning. Okay. There are, of course, state and national requirements, physical education and health requirements. I am not necessarily concerned for this class or even our lesson plans that you know and understand them, because I am pretty sure that you guys won't be PE teachers, but I do want to make you aware of course, those standards, just like every other content, things that we teach in school have standards. Okay. Um, One of the important things that we should remember is things must be developmentally appropriate for kids when you're creating lessons, when you're doing activities. You might have to have some modifications, accommodations for students depending upon their ability level. Why can't I use ready-made lesson plans for education? You sure can use them for PE, in my opinion, but you just need to make sure that you have to modify them, change them if you need be, and your students' needs require them to be changed. Okay, so you can use them. You can use pre-made lesson plans for any of your content areas, but you just need to make sure that they fit your students' needs. Okay, so PE classes are no different than your math, your science, your language classes in regards to adapting and modifying pre-made lesson plans. Okay. Um, inclusion, or what you include in your daily PE lesson plan. So again, some of these are going to be very similar. They are similar to our regular classroom lesson plans. Focus on the lesson, preparation for the lesson, the content progression, your steps, how you're going through everything, and then the ending closure assessment of the lesson. Okay, so focus, prep, content, ending. Okay. That should be very similar to our other lesson plans as well. Okay. So as we focus on the lesson, what's your grade level? What's your skill? And what is it that you want them to do? So you think of this step 3 as an objective. Okay. What's the objective or learnable piece in this class? Okay. Your skill theme then would be similar to what I would consider a standard in your classroom lesson plan. Okay. You have a standard, but then you have objectives in that learnable piece that you want the students to be able to learn. Obviously, match your lesson objectives and content to the developmental level of your class, both physically and cognitively. Okay, so you have to remember that grade level does not mean everybody's the same, right? But you're going to have some adaptations above and below that standard as well. Skill theme, again, here, this is what I'm talking about for motor skills for this lesson plan that we talked about. There's certain skills in PE that kids need to know, or that we need to teach them based upon our standards, right? And those skills can be developed and practiced in activities, games, etc. We might have to teach them those types of skills on an individual basis, right, where they get practice for that. Say kids have no idea how to throw, for example, right? We're not just going to throw them into a game where there's throwing involved and expect them to be able to pick it up. Okay, we're going to go through the steps and the progression with them to be able to figure it out, and then we'll start to, as they pick it up, throw into games and activities with that. It's the same as a classroom, a regular classroom, where you would work with students through learning a new piece of information and then give them an activity to do to practice that. I'm sorry, excuse me. The learnable piece then, right, is the objectives, right? What do you expect students to know or be able to do by the end of the lesson? Prep for the lesson, what equipment and materials they need, protocols, incident activities, right? So the equipment and materials are going to help the students learn. Same as objectives, same as technology you might use in your classroom, not objectives, same as manipulatives that you might use in your classroom, or the computers, the iPads, whatever it is that you need to help students do an activity in your regular classroom, you'll have the same thing in your PE classroom. You might have more equipment, though, depending upon the activity and game that you might be doing. Okay, so what are the safety protocols related to the use of the equipment and materials? Okay, so this might be a little different, and there might be more protocols in a PE classroom as compared to your regular classroom, right? Because there's probably less equipment to be used in the regular classroom. Instant activity. So the moment the students enter the physical education setting. So used to prepare students for physical activity and to warm up their bodies for movement, as well as prepare their minds for upcoming learning activities or events. So think of a hook, a beginning of your lesson in the regular classroom. Okay. Something you do to get the students' attention, something you do to get them engaged right away. Okay. So an instant activity in PE is what are you doing right away in a PE class to get the students moving, to get them engaged, to get them warmed up, loosened, etc. And maybe a lot of times you PE teachers might have students come in, sit down in certain spots, take attendance, etc. All that. Well, maybe instead of having them come in and sit down right away, they come in, they find you, they do a quick little activity where they're running, moving, whatever it might be to get warmed up, and then they come down and sit down for a short amount of time and do attendance. Okay. Typically, when students go to a PE class, they're kind of excited and ready to move and run for the most part. Some will not be, right? But the longer you make them wait, the more antsy they are, right? So get them moving right away, come back, sit down, then you can do attendance. That's something that's very similar that you can do in the classroom as well, right? When students come in, get them engaged right away. That prevents maybe some disruption, some behavior issues, and then have them settle down for attendance or whatever it may be, a conversation, a lecture thing that might be happening. The content progression that we talked about next, set induction, organization, and structure, and then developing the content. So set induction basically means you introduce your lesson or tell students what you're going to be learning, the importance of it, etc. So how you do that is up to you. That might be them sitting down, you talking to them. That might be up, that might be moving, whatever it might be. But you're going to explain to them what's going to happen that day. Okay. And then the class organization and structure, four parts of this that are important. You group the students, you perform, or wherever your space is at to do the activity, perform, you have the equipment, and then you form the activity and get things started or going. Okay. And then developing the content, right? So three tasks. You have extensions, you have applications, and you have refinements. Okay. So extensions are basically where you have to modify things either above or below. Hopefully that makes sense to get students to be able um, to understand it, participate in it, et cetera, right? So if you have a student that maybe has a physical disability, you're going to have to modify the game, some equipment, whatever it is, so that they can participate and understand and try to work towards being proficient in that task or in that skill. Okay? We might have kids that are super good at it, and so what can they do extra or above in order to complete it, to be advanced maybe in that application, right? So how do they perform the task? Is it quantitatively or qualitatively measured? Like, so we as teachers, again, probably observe, right? Or observe the application of the skill. We watch for it. Maybe we have a checklist or a box that we're checking, iPad, whatever it is that we might use to mark things off. But we still have to we still have to observe and assess those skills. Okay? And then refinements. So cues, us telling some student that focuses on a specific aspect of the skill that maybe they're struggling with. Um, so something that I use as examples a lot of times in movement and PE is like a skip. Okay. Some people just know how to skip, but those that don't can struggle with it. So how do you break it down? So you tell students to hop and then step and then hop and then step, because hopping is on one foot. Okay. And then obviously when you step, you go one foot to the other, right? So skipping is basically hop and then a step, hop and then a step. And that's how you can refine that for students that might be struggling with it. Then they just slow it down until they understand that pattern, and then they can get going. Ending the lesson, you have a closure and assessment of some kind. So closure, remind kids of what we covered in the lesson, what they learned, what the purpose of it was. And then you can also talk about maybe you're having an extension of that, or maybe you're scaffolding upon something in regards to a skill. So you can talk about what's happening next time they meet, next class period, the next day, next week, etc. An assessment, again, two types of assessment for us to take a look at as teachers, always in every classroom, no matter what, is the formal and informal assessment. So your formal assessment is document driven, okay, where evaluation data is recorded, right? So this is maybe a test. It might be a performance test in PE, right, where you're watching them actually do the skill, right? And that's going to be maybe their grade for it, or that's their final test, final assessment. Okay, so formal is always something that is recorded, that is maybe done at the end of a unit, end of a lesson, etc. Informal then is something that you observe or you see and you constantly give feedback on, right? So going back to that refinement component here, of developing the content. When you refine something with kids, you're giving them informal assessment. Okay, you're giving them feedback, helping them correct it, helping them to master that skill. And so, in two important parts for assessment. A couple different types of lesson plan formats. So scripted and column. Scripted requires you to write down everything as the way you want to do it and say it to your class. So sometimes people use this if they're very unsure. It's a brand new lesson, and there's even some boxed curriculum that is scripted. That you say this. If a student says this, then you go over here. If they say that, then you go over here, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And so there is some scripted curriculum and scripted formats. Sometimes when we're new as teachers, we write down a lot of questions. We write down the things we want to ask so we don't forget them. When you become a more seasoned instructor, sometimes you're able to remember that process, the way you do things for certain lessons. Okay. Column format then highlights content development in separate sections. So this is a little bit more, there's not so much put into the lessons. And honestly, when you get into a school setting, the lesson plans look different for all of our schools. They're typically electronic now, and it's a lot of checking the boxes, maybe typing in some information. But it's also important for us as teachers to know what we're going to do, have things laid out so we're ready to go for that day. Okay, so that's the lesson plan format outline for chapter 4. Chapter 5 talks about different strategies that we can use for instruction. So while we're planning our lesson plans or putting together our lesson plans, what strategies are we going to use? Okay. So communication, first off, in PE and the strategies we might use. Break down important information into manageable pieces, right? And so again, this goes back to our regular classroom as well, right? It's not that this is just specifically for PE, but if you have a concept that is difficult to understand, it has multiple steps within it and processes, etc., break it down into manageable pieces and teach a little bit at a time and practice a little bit at a time and master a little bit at a time. Okay? Enforcing a system of rules or expectations and procedures during class lesson. Research indicates student practice time is often diminished due to too much time spent listening to instruction, waiting, transitioning, right? So it is important that we share expectations, we talk about things, but if we talk in a PE class for 15 minutes about rules and expectations and procedures out of a 35-minute class, we're missing a lot of time to get students active, right? Same goes with in our regular classroom. If we are talking a lot about rules and procedures, et cetera, we're kind of wasting a little bit of time. So while they are important and we need students to know what's going on and what the rules and procedures are, we want to be short with them if we can, and then reinforce them as the lessons are happening. It's better just to maybe talk for 5 minutes, try to get everything in, and maybe you got an activity going for 10 minutes, stop, pause for a few minutes in between there, reinforce them so that students are active and going and they're not losing interest while we're talking on these things. So, okay. So 3 phases to structure a physical education lesson. Again, talking about lesson planning again right here, but introduction, body of lesson, and lesson closure. The last chapter here, we just talked about an instant activity, right? So something that you can do to begin your lesson or even before you start your lesson, but get the kids active and moving right away. Something that doesn't take a whole lot of instruction. Okay, so it could be things that you've done in the past, right? And maybe it's a simple game. Maybe they're um, playing a quick game of tag, to get moving and warmed up. And it might connect to your lesson of the day, right? But whatever you do there, it allows the students to begin moving immediately and not having to sit in a PE class and wait for 10 or 15 minutes to get going while you're starting to do some instruction. How do you do that? Inform students verbally what you want them to do. If it's something that's a little bit more complicated, write or draw instructions on a blackboard, poster, whiteboard, etc., as a welcome message. Okay, so if you have it written up ahead of time, students can come in and see, they can read that, okay, and then they can have an idea of what they're going to do, what activity is going to happen, et cetera. Like I said, if it's something you've done before, you can put an outline on there. 5 minutes freeze tag, 5 minutes sharks and minnows, or whatever it might be. Okay, so you want it to have minimal reading though, so it doesn't take a long time to do that. Okay. So what are the benefits of these instant activities? Okay. Gives us time to prepare for the lesson, address any management issues, right? If a student is coming in maybe upset to the class, we can talk to that student while those other students are engaged in an activity. We can still monitor them and listen to that student. So it gives us some time to kind of see the classroom management and get a sense and feel of it. Especially if you're a specials teacher, for example, you don't have the students all the time. You've got them for 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and then they're out the door, and then somebody else is coming in, right? So you don't always know the things that are happening or going on with the students all the time. Okay? And then it gives students time to review activities from previous lessons, maybe transition to the next thing. Maybe they need a little bit of time to decompress from what was happening in the classroom. They just want to get out some energy, whatever it might be. But movement facilitates cognition, right? So movement helps us with thinking. I mean, I think we know if you sit too long and we're reading or studying or whatever, then sometimes it's hard. So to get up and move helps us refocus, right, with that. So when you begin a lesson, right, the couple things that we should do, and I think we kind of covered this a little bit, right, but talk about communicate what you're going to do with the students, what the activity is, how you're going to do it, gain their interest, okay? Introduce it. Anticipatory set is something that we use in our regular lesson plan, right? So what is the interest of it? Maybe it's a video of the activity you're going to do. Maybe it's a song. Maybe they're moving to do something. Maybe you demonstrate what's going to happen, and then you blast off, right, or get ready to go with that activity. Scaffolding is important in our regular classrooms as well. So it's the same thing in a PE classroom. What is the link that you can create between previous classes, previous learning experiences, and the new content? Okay, this isn't always going to be the case, but a lot of times you can connect those things together. A new skill might connect with an old skill, that they learned, and it probably should and does. Okay. Sell the lesson by displaying enthusiasm about the lesson. This doesn't, again, just go for PE. This can go for all of our classes, all of our content, all of our lessons, right? If we do not seem excited, if we seem kind of ho hum and whatever about the lesson, the kids probably aren't going to be too excited about it either, unless they personally really like the content that we are using. So voice intonation, don't be monotone, hand gestures, goofy gestures, whatever, to get the kids excited and engaged about it. So talking with your hands can be good with that. Visual demonstrations. Students remember what they see, not what you say. So modeling what you want to happen, modeling a skill is just as important as talking about it. Okay. And so maybe we can't do a skill, but maybe we can bring a student up that we know that can do it and they can demonstrate it for us. Okay. So it doesn't always have to be us. Okay. Demonstrate the skill without providing verbal information. Repeat demonstration in slow motion using brief verbal cues to help students focus on important aspects of demonstration. Now you can use video, right? You probably could a while ago, but you can video yourself. You can pull up a video off YouTube of somebody doing that skill that you're trying to teach, and you can do the slow motion component of that so that they can see how things are broken down. Okay. Full speed under which can demonstrate at full speed using the same conditions under which the students will be practicing. So if it's a part of a game, if it's part of an activity, how are you going to use that during the game and activity and do that during at full speed? And then demonstrate from a number of views emphasizing different cues, right? So if there are certain cues that you will give for a skill or activity, if it's a multi-step skill, then what are those cues? When will you be sharing them and talking about them with the students? Okay. Questioning and problem solving in PE, right? Questions can be embedded with problem solving strategies. They are used to stimulate student involvement. So you can question students about how they might use the skill, when they might use the skill outside of the game or activity that you would be that you have developed for them, for example. Okay. So different types of questions, right? Closed questions, simple yes or no answer. Rhetorical questions tend not to solicit a response. You want to be careful with rhetorical questions in the regular classroom and in your specials classroom that you don't, you just want to be careful with them because sometimes rhetorical questions are used not in the most appropriate way, right? So, but closed questions and then open questions. But any questions you ask should hopefully demonstrate student understanding. So a lot of critical thinking questions possibly, or why questions. Why are you doing it? What happens if you would do it this way? Did you think about trying this skill this way when you're throwing? Did you think about how you might turn your wrist, etc.? So lots of different ways you can question students to get them thinking about what they're doing. Okay. So strategies for receiving student responses. So call out is an immediate verbal response from students. Try to avoid that if you can. Okay, giving students get time to process, having them raise their hand, whatever process that you use to get responses from students, just give them time, but avoid the call out ones if possible. Okay? Um, Students physically respond to a question by demonstrating the answer. So you can have movement responses rather than just talking about it. Maybe it's a movement to that when you're talking about, changing a skill or how you do something, have them demonstrate that rather than just talking about it. I just talked about wait time a little bit, but wait time is super important, right? To allow students time to think about and process information. Some students and adults process things very quickly and can answer and think and share information quickly. Others take more time, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, right? So wait time is important. Giving kids time to think. Silence is okay sometimes. It may feel awkward to us as teachers, but give us some time to pause and think and reflect on a question. KWL, KWL is a process. Sometimes we call them charts, right? But what students know, what they want to know, and what they learned, right? So this can help us as teachers understand student interest and also understand their background and experiences maybe in an activity, right? So we can ask them what they already know about the activity or game or skill, what they might want to know more about, and then at the end, what they learned so that we are sure, or then we can, another way for us to understand and assess if students picked up on the skill. A couple different types of problem solving skills here. So we have convergent and divergent problem solving. So convergent involves questions to guide students to discover an answer. Okay. Whereas divergent are open-ended questions that might have multiple answers and they can then decide or work towards what answer they come up with. Okay. So both are important. Both have places in the classroom, right? But the convergent one might be used for maybe some more difficult ones or things where we have to lead them towards the answer. And the divergent ones gives them more independence to maybe solve a problem in multiple ways, come up with solutions in multiple ways, etc. Checking for understanding is important as well, right? So a couple ways that we can do this. Performance checks where the students physically or demonstrate a skill by maybe doing it together. And maybe they call it out together. That would be choral responding, and the entire class gets the opportunity to respond at once, etc. Um, they can physically, this performance check can be individual or together as a class. Recognition checks then require students to identify if they recognize a demonstration as correct or incorrect. So if they have to recognize a skill, maybe I perform it, and then they have to decide if I'm doing it correctly or incorrectly. Okay. So we have to also monitor and check student responses, right? So competent bystander is an individual who appears to be engaged but avoids participation. Okay, so things like sometimes participating, but when we're not looking, they might stop, or may not be as engaged, okay, as that. So the check for understanding helps us to make sure that all students are getting the content, and if they're not, or they don't understand it, that we can help them with that. Sometimes in PE, for example, or even chorus or band or art, students don't want to be involved. They may know how to do things, but they don't want to be involved, and they might evoke this competent bystander role, where they're engaged just as much as they need to, but then pull back when they don't have to be engaged. Okay. In a PE classroom at recess, this is important too, but how we move around that teaching space, the gym, the recess room, or not the recess room, the recess space when kids are out playing and moving, etc. Back to the wall is a good strategy to keep all students in view during a lesson. It's not going to happen all the time, and there's going to be times where you're going to have your back to kids, but if we can stay on the perimeter as much as possible, that's the best way to make sure we see everything that's happening majority of the time. Okay, but purposely move around the space that you're using. Okay. Don't stand in a corner and watch. Don't stand in the middle and try to watch, but purposely move around. We've got a variety of feedback that we can give kids as well. Typically, a lot of it's going to be corrective feedback for in PE class, as well as in a regular classroom, right? But how do we fix what the students are doing? How do we help them? But we give them some corrective feedback to make adjustments, right? General feedback that could be positive feedback, right? Where we're telling them good job or whatever it might be, but just some general generic feedback typically provides encouragement. I like to try to be and to have you guys be as specific as possible in the feedback. That way, kids know exactly what they're doing well. But sometimes a good job is okay to say, as long as we can come back, hopefully, and give them some specific feedback later. And then congruent feedback provides information directly related to the cues of the practice, task, or the skill that they are working on. Okay. Two strategies that provide students opportunities to work at individual levels are teaching by invitation, where this provides students with a choice of ways to adapt a task for the purpose of providing an appropriate challenge, right? So giving them a couple options, or giving them the opportunity to adapt what they're working on, maybe within an activity or on their own. And then intra-task, variation, where a teacher directs individual students to modify the task to ensure appropriate challenges. Okay, so a couple different variations there. And then wrapping up a lesson closure, whatever that looks like. You might bring them together for a minute, 30 seconds. Maybe they got equipment to pick up. As they're picking up the equipment, they go and they put it away. They got to come back to you and share. They share with you, what they learned that day or whatever that might be. But as you close up the lesson, you have to give them the opportunity to kind of in a PE class, kind of calm down a little bit, right? Maybe it's a drink of water, maybe it's putting the equipment away. You come together, you share with them the lesson, the wrap up of your lesson. You talk about what you're going to do next time, maybe whatever